Thomas Westbrook here of Holy Kool-Aid. You're watching Atheist Edge. Congratulations to you guys on hitting 1 year of putting out steady, amazing content. If you guys are watching this, like, subscribe, share it around. Let's see them get to 100,000 by year 2.
The creativity movement, formerly known as the Church of the Creator, was founded in 1973 by some clown named Ben Klassen. Their most important tenet? The biological continuance of the white race on planet Earth is the highest good. Adherents to the faith believe that homosexuality, interracial marriage, black crimes, and illegal drugs are deteriorating white America.
A great way to erase the popularity of a rival religion is to rededicate all of their monuments, shrines, landmarks, artifacts, and buildings to your own God. And no one did it better than Christianity. After all, they didn't become the most popular religion on earth by being inclusive. A few Christianized sites of note, the Roman Forum, Senate, and Temple of Romulus, were transformed into Christian churches. Much of the Vatican is built on the ancient site of a polytheistic necropolis. In Greece, the Parthenon was renamed Church of the Virgin Mary. The French Notre Dame de Tours Cathedral was once a temple of Mithras. Several British churches were once sacred pagan sites, such as the Temple of Claudius from ancient Rome. The New World was not spared either. The Mexico City Metropolitan Cathedral was built on an Aztec temple. One could also mention innumerable but likely smaller and less permanent Native American sacred sites that were wiped off the face of the earth because these unchristian heathens don't deserve to have their own religion, religious sites, or for that matter, their own land. Why don't the original Native American tribes who lived on that land for centuries deserve to have their own religion and keep their land? Because of manifest destiny. A very handy little ideology, and a phrase popularized in the eastern United States in 1845. Manifest destiny was the idea that Christian settlers of the United States were destined by Yahweh and Christ to expand their dominion and spread democracy and capitalism, and of course, Christianity, across the entire North American continent. Well, spread it at least to the white Christian men who eventually would own the land. When your people and your government are asked to explain why they slaughtered much of the indigenous population and herded the survivors onto reservations, manifest destiny is a short and sweet and extremely handy answer to have in your pocket. Of course, this is the pattern of history. One culture either supplants another through conquest or by moving into an abandoned settlement, or two or more cultures merge and evolve into something significantly different over time. In any case, if the infrastructure is already there, it often makes more sense to keep it and repurpose it, possibly by chiseling out any differing ideology and replacing it with a new one, usually your own. Still, in many of the aforementioned cases, the original structure, or perhaps its ruins, were wholly replaced by a different one. The people who are used to walking to the older place of worship can still maintain some semblance of a pattern. It likely makes the transition in ideologies marginally easier to accept. And of course, with additional generations, the original structures are forgotten, and the old religious beliefs have been effectively blotted out, and the newer ones successfully indoctrinated. Besides usurping monuments and places of worship, you can also do things like adapt previous holidays, like transform religious festivals of the ancient Roman Saturnalia and the pagans of Scandinavia into a newly created Christian holiday, something we'll call Christmas. You know, those wonderful, warm, loving things like kissing under the mistletoe, Yuletide caroling, decorating the tree, wreaths, decking the halls with boughs of holly, hanging stockings by the fire, drinking yourself silly, and even gift-giving were all aspects of pagan holidays that were adapted into the Christmas celebrations over the years. If you're going to force Christianity into people's lives, it may serve you well to cushion the blow by allowing them to continue some of their godless heathen ways. Oh, that is until those ways are then used as examples of a war on Christmas, where they overshadow the true meaning of the holiday. You know, the birth of a savior or something, who was likely born in the springtime rather than the winter, when there wasn't any snow, Christmas trees, Santa Claus. Never mind. Anyways, throughout history, many advanced societies allowed wide varieties of religions and beliefs to be practiced. The United States is simply one of the most recent examples, but even some areas of the Arab world had a wonderfully pluralistic society until Islam started to dominate. In many cases, though, this pluralism made the acquisition of centralized power, usually in the form of a single ruler, extremely difficult, sort of like herding cats. So many of the aspiring autocrats instituted policies of a single religious belief in order to keep all of the citizenry on the same page, in order, and therefore under control. Even while he was admonishing his own empire Saturnalia, the first century Roman philosopher, statesman, and tutor of the future emperor Nero, Lucius Annius Seneca, who was quite well read in history and forward-seeing, wrote, "Religion is regarded by the common people as true, by the wise as false, and by the rulers as useful."
Alright, I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly. Attis, Phrygia, something like that. 1250 BCE was the Greek god of vegetation. He was, this is about to get good, born of a virgin on the 25th of December. Called the only begotten Son, Savior of mankind, Most High God and the Logos, the Word. The Son and the Father. He was crucified on a Friday and resurrected on the third day, eaten as bread by his followers. Now I must ask, does this actually predate Jesus? I'm not too familiar with this actual Greek god, which I would love to read more into, but it's a well-known fact that a lot of the stories that shows up in one religion usually shows up in many other religions in some shape, form, or fashion. Sometimes maybe the wording is different, the name of the god is different. Sometimes there's a little tweak here, a little tweak there to make it, give it its own spin. I think that a lot of the characters in the Bible and in Islam and all of these different sources mimic other characters in other religions and vice versa. There are religions that exist today that has completely hijacked certain parts of Christianity or Islam or Judaism or Buddhism, you name it. There are different religions all the time copywriting different people's work or hijacking it. I like to use the word duct tape in order to kind of give credence to their actual beliefs. It's usually these myths that have some kind of significance in our minds that allows us to relate to one another. And we do that through stories. And if you find stories that are powerful enough to really make a difference in people's lives, why not do what works? There's no really a need to reinvent the wheel.
4 reasons why religion is man-made: inconsistency and randomization. No 2 religions on the planet can agree on fundamental doctrine. If there were truly a universal truth, we would not see so much disparity between the world's belief systems. Geography. Religions fit a little too neatly into geographic boundaries. This is highly suspect. An omnipotent deity would not let political boundaries stop him from spreading his message. Death. Humans as a species fear death, fear the dark, and fear the unknown. The vast number of competing ways these issues are resolved makes religion dubious. Divine hiddenness. One curious similarity all religions share: deities love to remain hidden for one reason or another. It's curious that no matter which religion you're talking about, God is always the hide-and-seek champion of the universe. While these are interesting perceptions, I do disagree with the comment that these are legitimate reasons to prove that religion is man-made. Inconsistency and randomization amongst various religions is no surprise. There could simply be many incorrect religions and one true one. This could be mirrored in competing scientific theories, where there are people who believe both the Earth is flat, the Earth is banana-shaped, and the Earth is a sphere. One of them is right, others are wrong. There's a claim an omnipotent deity would not let social and geographic boundaries stop the spread. This claim is not supported. It could be that the true religion is not for all of humanity, and the Creator really does not care whether the religion spreads or not. The resolution of the issues surrounding death by religions being varied is also not support to the claim that religion is man-made, but simply that there are various religions. Divine hiddenness. I cannot comment on all religions, not having studied them all, but the simple fact that God is hidden is not a proof that religions are man-made. I have made in the past the claim that the vast varieties of religions that exist lead me to believe that if God does exist, He does not care if we know about Him. You could study religions from the moment of birth until your death and not cover them all. The true religion, if one exists, could be one of the major Abrahamic religions, or it could be some very small practice that is only continued on a small Oklahoma reservation with only 15 people following it. You could die, an earnest person, sincere in attempting to find the true religion, could die before covering all of the possible religions. It's just impossible to find the true one without some sort of better message. You could study religions from the age you can read until death and not cover them all. I've held that a message from God must be verifiable, and an omnipotent God that wishes to know about us would provide a verifiable message. I've given this as a metaphor of a soldier who receives an order. The soldier can choose to disobey the order, but for the order to be valid, he has to know the source, and that source who provided the order is a legitimate authority above him. Otherwise, you would have issues on a modern battlefield in being spoofed by the enemy and told to do things like fire on your own people.
Some Christians do not have a literal interpretation of the Noah's Ark story. They argue that the story is allegory and the flood was a localized event, not worldwide. As evidence for this, Genesis 2:11 and 2:13 are often cited. These passages, when read in the original Hebrew, seem to indicate the whole world really means the whole local area of Havilah or Cush, Ethiopia. This little flood theory or interpretation is problematic for the following reasons. According to Genesis 7:19, every mountain on earth was covered by water. Genesis 7:14, Yahweh ordered Noah to put 2 of every type of bird onto the ark. During the flood, all birds were supposedly wiped off the face of the earth as well, Genesis 7:23. If this was a local flood, why would God need to even bring birds on the ark in the first place when they could have easily flown out of the region to dry land? If the flood was just a local event, it's not really much of a miracle, is it? So it defeats the purpose of it being a miracle. Yahweh created rainbows as a symbol of his promise never to kill all of humanity with water again. If the flood is just allegorical, why are rainbows real? And lastly, if the flood were regional and God promised never to do it again, then why are there still so many devastating and deadly floods every year?
Yeah, this is my favorite topic, and I could talk all day about this, but I'd like to zoom in on this idea of we're gonna say that, well, the Bible doesn't really mean what it says because X, Y, Z. And Owen and I have met a lot of Christians in visiting churches, particularly the liberal churches. If you go to Episcopalian or Presbyterian churches, you will find Christians who are as dismissive of the Old Testament as we are, or even the magic stuff in the New Testament. They'll say, yeah, that's clearly man-made. That's just a made-up story. Either they'll do the game you're doing here and say, oh well, there's some kernel of truth to it, but it got expanded, or they'll just say what I would tend to say is it's just a made-up story. But they'll still go to church and sing the songs and are sure that they're going to see grandma in heaven when they die. And the problem for those very liberal Christians that are joining us in dismissing the Bible is that the parts that they still want Jesus to have in some sense been resurrected, and they still want to have the afterlife. They don't have any basis for that. There's, if you dismiss the Bible, where did you get that belief? And of course we know we got the belief because Mommy told me when I was little, but they won't ever say that. And so at least the fundamentalists who believe it all happened, the Ken Ham crowd that'll tell you absolutely Noah and his ark, the story happened just like it did in the Bible. At least they have a consistency, right? At least they are, I think they have a problem with science, but at least they're being consistent in when they say, the Bible promises an afterlife and the Bible, assures us of a bodily resurrection of Jesus. At least they've got a basis for it. Whereas the liberals that have dismissed the magic parts of the Bible have no basis for the few things they want to cling to.
Right. So to Rex's point, this question here is exactly the wheelhouse for skeptical Texans. There is a fascinating spectrum of belief inside of Christianity. And there are quite a number of conservative believers who are fundamentalists who accept the literal truth of everything from Genesis 1:1 all the way to the end. But there are other believers that tend to slide a little bit further away from literal belief across that spectrum all the way to the end. And I've even met Christians who've argued that the crucifixion narrative is really just sort of a metaphorical. You wonder how you get there, but anyway, the truth is that Christians occupy a fascinating spectrum. I grew up very, very, very far down the literal path of belief. I came out of a denomination and a church that was really very much young earth. I grew up in a Christianity where my youth group made jokes about people that thought the Big Bang was even remotely feasible. And they would say, very derisive things in front of me. And here I'm a science-minded kid in middle school and in high school, really having a hard time with the things I'm hearing. I kind of kept my mouth shut about it. But eventually I realized I can't accept that anymore. But there are Christians further down the denomination who really don't accept that all of those things are literally true. They're willing to believe that the earth is over 4 billion years old, and they're willing to dismiss the Adam and Eve story, the talking snake story as metaphor, and they fast forward. At some point, they get to a place in the Bible where the stories being told become true and real, and for most Christians, they'll start with the resurrection. That's got to be real,
Right.
That's part and parcel of what it takes. But at some point, they go backwards. And at some point, working backwards, the stories start to become metaphorical rather than real. For some people, that's in the New Testament around the birth narratives or the miracle stories of Jesus, and in some people that you got to get all the way back to Genesis before they say, no, I accept all the stories told and the rest of the Pentateuch, but the Genesis creation story, that's really metaphorical. But the only people who are consistent across that entire spectrum, this was Rex's point, are the people that say, if there was a video camera running the day the conversation happened between Eve and the snake, it would have captured video of a talking snake. It's somebody. I always point to Ken Ham because he's such a fun person to watch and listen to. But right.
He will tell you straight up the same thing Owen just said. We cannot set down any of this. This all has to be literal because as soon as you open up to the idea that this could be metaphorical, then you could apply that to everything, and you have nothing. You have no rock to stand on at that point. And one of the most fascinating conversations Owen and I had was we spent the better part of a day in the church library with an Episcopalian priest, and we're pressing him on this very point. And he said, absolutely, the birth narratives, we talked about how, there's no historicity of the worldwide census, and there's no historicity of, Herod ordering the death of all the children, that Josephus would have recorded these things. And he's like, yeah, these birth narratives are, clearly fable, clearly made up stories, clearly myth. But the resurrection of Jesus, that's real. That's all I have to hang my hat on, is the resurrection of Jesus. And I said, it's exactly the same book. you're saying in the epistle, I'm sorry, in the Gospel of Matthew, the first few chapters are made up, but the last few chapters are absolutely historically correct. And he says yes, that's basically his position, and there's no basis for that position
other than belief, which gets us back to the human nature of religion. It's not divinely given. It is a human being with a belief, defining for him or herself what the structure is going to be.